I'm Victor Fernandez of Fernandez Fit, and I'm here to show you why fitness is our business. Hello and welcome once again to the Fitness is Our Business podcast, the show that helps busy professionals not just survive, but thrive in their demanding personal and professional lives by taking control of their health and fitness. I'm your host, Victor Fernandez. Thanks for joining me as you do each and every week. I truly appreciate it. Now, if this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. But whether you're new or you've been following for a while, make sure to subscribe to the show and share it far and wide, because many more people need to learn that fitness is our business. And I'm excited for this show because I get to bring on my next guest. He's an accomplished speaker, author, podcaster who's going to make us think as well as laugh with his blend of insightful sales and marketing tips accumulated over more than 35 years in the industry, and his self-proclaimed, these are his words, not mine, dumb stories. Oh, and he's also president of Surf Financial Brokers, by the way, so we can talk about that too. So please welcome to the show, Chris Castanes. Chris, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Victor, for having me. And before we go any further, I want to say thank you for putting a great, your own podcast out there that's positive, it's helpful. On behalf of your listeners, we appreciate you giving us, good stuff instead of, there's too much negativity out there. I like listening to a podcast like yours where there's some information I can use. I'm going to feel better. And I might even consider implementing some of the things that aren't too hard to do. So
there you go. Well, for the audience out there, for the 2 or 3 people listening to the show, hopefully it's more than that. Chris has a podcast of his own as well that I was, honored to be on just a short, a few days back. The recording will come out, I think, probably in September. I think Chris had told me, but I look forward to hearing that. Of course, actually was on twice. We did a couple of different episodes because both of us, we like to run our mouths, and one episode simply wasn't enough. So you'll just have to listen to 2. It is what it is, folks. You can't say you weren't warned in advance. So we'll talk about Chris's podcast as well, among many other things. The first question I have for you, though, is, I like the fact, because I'm much the same way, that even though you're, obviously in the business world and you've garnered a ton of experience and helped a lot of people over 35 years, you don't take yourself too seriously, much like myself. You can appreciate a good sense of humor. So talk about how, especially in sales and marketing, taking that sort of, a little more casual, light, and really, it can be funny as well, approach to help people really understand what you're trying to educate them on.
Well, okay, so what happens is, for instance, I'm in the insurance business, and I talk about life insurance and disability insurance and long-term care insurance, none of which are happy subjects for people. Hey, Victor, let's talk about when you die, or let's talk about when you're so sick or injured or hurt that you can't work anymore and provide for your family. Yeah, that's not a feel-good conversation. So sometimes you have to just lighten the mood a little bit. And it doesn't mean yucking it up and being a circus clown or, I'm not going to come out with a car with a bunch of clowns or whatever behind me. But just a little bit of humor, levity, it helps just lighten the mood. And on the other part of that, because it is a sales presentation most times, it gets the guard down. If you can get someone to laugh or just to chuckle, it puts their guard down because they're defensive at that point. So, that part is just like, look, I'm not here to take your money and run away and be the evil sales guy that we always, stereotypically think about. But I am there to help. And if I can just lighten the mood, I'll give you a great example. Years ago, I had a lady and she wanted to buy some final expense life insurance, which you always see those commercials on TV for life insurance for your burial, whatever. And she had a little bit of money in the bank. And she said, I know exactly what I want. I want $15,000. I've already gone to the funeral home. I've done the math. I know how much things are going to cost. I have a little bit put aside, I want exactly $15,000, no more, no less. So I came back to her, I don't know, a few days later, a week later, 2 presentations, 2 illustrations, because that morning I took 2 smartass pills instead of my normal 1 smartass pill. And one was for $15,000 she asked for, and the other was for $20,000. And it was all of an extra $7 or $8 a month in premium, nothing huge. And she went off on me, just furious. Why'd you do that? I told you what I wanted, blah, 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 blah. And with the straightest face possible, I said, but what if you wanted an open bar at your funeral? And she just looked at me and chuckled. And I knew I had her. And she was like, okay, yeah, I'll take that one. So, I mean, it was just, I was doing it just as a joke, but I didn't know she was going to actually buy the thing. So, and that was a case where I actually knew the woman. It wasn't something I just met her a couple of weeks before. I'd known her for a while. So she knew me a little better too. And that helps. But any kind of, and in general, there again, if I'm laughing on the inside, I'm generally feeling good. And, I don't, if I've got a ton of stress, I'm not going to be able to be funny at all, much less just drop a little joke here and there. And so when you're doing sales calls, it's all about holistically, I guess. I have to feel good. They can sense if I'm nervous or not feeling very confident, or if I'm upset about something, which is one reason why I stopped listening to talk radio between my sales calls. I used to go on sales calls and listen to talk radio, and I'd go into an appointment and I'd just be furious, just angry, like, why did that guy say that? Or why is this, they would just, all they want to do is rile you up. And I don't need that stress. So now I just listen to podcasts in the car and, easy listening music. No, just kidding. I don't listen to
Depends on the mood I'm in. Sometimes, I admit it, sometimes.
Sometimes, things happen. So, a little levity is good. You don't want to go in to a sales call being too funny or, of course, making any kind of, remarks that are going to offend people. You always have a couple of little back pocket jokes you keep in your back pocket. I'll ask somebody if their husband's behaving this week or something like that. Just nobody's going to, every once in a while, you'll get the one go, as a matter of fact, no. we're in the middle of a divorce, but
and you're like, oh, let me try this again. Take 2.
Exactly. But what I have the same jokes I tell everybody, but they think I just pulled it out originally for them. So, once you tested a few bits of comedy, it helps.
Well, the delivery it's all about the delivery. It's all, if they believe it, it's true. But you're 100% right. I mean, there's industries like obviously insurance being one. Health and fitness really is right up there with it. I mean, nobody really wants to talk about it. It's nobody wants to be beaten over the head with it. I mean, so many of us, and I put myself right in that same classification. 15 years ago, I was 250 pounds. I didn't want to hear about that I was overweight and unhealthy. I already knew I was overweight and unhealthy. I didn't want to hear about it. But the reason I hired my first coach is because she talked to me in terms I could understand. It wasn't about what I hadn't done up to that point. It was about what I could do moving forward and how that could change me. That was the important thing. Once it was couched in a different way, in a different perspective, it changed everything. It changed the entire meaning of what I wanted to accomplish. It wasn't about, I wasted so many years and didn't do this and should have been doing that. It was, okay, we can't change that, but we can certainly change what happens now and what happens moving forward. And I know with life insurance, it can be a very testy subject, a very sensitive subject. Honestly, it is for me. My dad passed away nearly 2 years ago, and they didn't have life insurance. So it's a topic that really hits home with me. And for me, the first thing I did after my dad passed away, after laying him to rest, was go and get more life insurance. We already had a good bit. We got even more. Trying to, I guess, put a positive, on a tragic experience, and it's definitely tough. So for you, how important is it to speak to people in a way that they can connect with, resonate with, so it doesn't feel so hard and such a heavy subject?
Yeah. Well, like you were saying just now, you had to go through that experience with your father's passing to realize that you probably needed more life insurance, and I get that a lot. I mean, the easiest sales for me are the ones where somebody has seen mom and dad have to go into the nursing home, and then they realize, oh my God, I didn't realize long-term care insurance costs so much. I mean, long-term
Mm-hmm.
care costs so much. I need to get some insurance. And oddly enough, most of my long-term care sales, for instance, are from people in their 40s, where the target market, according to the industry, is in their 50s and 60s. These are the people that are paying at that point where they're having to pay those bills. And so, it is what it is. But we have to remember that if I just said life insurance, hey, Victor, you need life insurance, or do you need life insurance? People go, no. But if I rephrase it and I go, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most important, how important is it for you to make sure that when you die, or if you died unexpectedly, your family will be taken care of and they can stay in their home and pay the bills and have all the things and not have all that stress? Well, then you're going to go like, oh, that's a 9 or a 10. So how we phrase things is usually the most successful way of doing it. There's nothing worse than going to a company and you go, hey, I'm here to sell life insurance to your employees. And they turn around and they look at it. Does anybody here need any life insurance? They all go, no. And then you walk out with nothing. But if I can sit down with each person and say, how important is it on a scale of 1 to 10 that if you were sick or hurt and unable to work, you could still pay your bills and have everybody else stay comfortable in your family? That's important to people. And so when you phrase it, you're not telling them what the product does or the features. You're telling them what the result of it will be and how it will be better for them if they have it. So in the same vein, as your business, hey, who here is fat and needs to lose weight? And or who here would like to lose some weight so they can live a little longer and walk their daughter down the aisle and see their kids graduate and see their grandkids? When you phrase it a little differently, then, oh, that's a 9 or a 10, you know.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I had a conversation the other day with someone who thought it was too late, to get started on taking care of their health and well-being. They're well into their 60s, and they hadn't really done anything about it up to that point, or at least the right things about it. And I said, absolutely. I said, it's never too late. I mean, really, the only way it would be too late is if you never choose to do anything about it.
or if you're dead already.
Or, well, exactly. And that's the thing. And you hate to make levity of it, but but you have to. I mean, you have to make it a subject that doesn't seem so overwhelming. I mean, as a good friend of mine always says, all of us are going to die.
Yeah.
That's the only fact of life. All of us are going to die someday, and we can't avoid that. But we can do everything in our power to put ourselves in the best position to, push that day into the future as much as humanly possible. We can
Right.
do that. That we have control over.
So yeah, I mean it's true, and it doesn't matter how old you are. Um, you know, Colonel Sanders didn't start KFC till he was in his 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not sure how he got to be a colonel, but anyway, military rank wise.
Well, when you're the only one in the ranks, you get to pick whatever
Well,
you want.
it was the wisest. It was the wisest.
You get to pick whatever you want. It's entirely up to you, and everybody else will just have to be okay with that.
Yeah,
So,
I know. I know.
well, I know for me, I got into sales very, very late in my life. I didn't get into sales till I got into the fitness industry. I'd been in newspapers 26 years. So, I wrote the stories. They paid me to write the stories. That was the end of it. That was, about the end of the sales experience for me, which there was none. And knowing what I know now in these past, half dozen or so years, I know it probably would have been a good idea for me to get involved in sales in some way, shape, or form in my early adult life, because everybody needs sales experience, because there's frankly very few jobs that don't require sales experience. So how did you get into it?
Well, I got into sales originally. I mean, let me back it up. I've always been in sales, even as a kid. I was the kid that used to go around and sell tickets to things for school. I would go around the neighborhood and knock on doors, which is mostly frowned upon nowadays because you just don't know who's behind the door.
Yeah, very true.
But, I mean, we did all the things as a kid. And then when I was in college, I took a position in sales, basically just as a distributor for magazines. You would see these display things, get college student rates for magazine subscriptions and credit cards. And I did that. I went around and just handed them out and put them in people's bags and stuff. And, and then when I got out of college, I was selling insurance door to door. And, it just progressed. I went from that to office supplies, did that for a while because I got tired of people pulling guns on me selling insurance. I mean, they put you out in the middle of nowhere, man. Out in the
That would
country.
be frowned upon in my book, to
Yeah,
be in
that was
that
not
position.
fun.
Frowned
And,
upon.
so it was that kind of thing. I've always done some sort of sales. I got back into insurance about 25 years ago, and I've enjoyed it. But what I've realized is that and I give these talks when I do talk to people sometimes in groups, that we're really all in sales at some point, because sales is nothing more than asking somebody to do something, take an action now. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. I mean, it doesn't have to be financial or transaction. It can just be, hey, Victor, why don't we take this podcast and maybe take it on the road? I'm trying to sell you an idea,
Mm-hmm.
and a great example of that is like a basketball coach. He recruits a few new players. He wants them to buy in to his game
Mm-hmm.
plan, and so that's the way it works. You're just trying to get people to do something now. That's all it is. Because if I asked you, hey, Victor, you want to buy some life insurance? And you said, well, come back to me in a year, that doesn't do me any good. And because I've got to eat too, believe it or not. So, so
I,
we're all in sales. I mean, if you're asking your kid to eat their vegetables at dinner, or if you're trying to convince someone to hire you for a job, or if you're
mm-hmm.
single and you're out there ready to mingle and you want to make the best impression on whoever you're trying to attract, um, we're all selling, and so the key principles can be transferable, not just in a sales setting, but you can almost use them as life hacks in a lot of ways if you know a few tricks and tips. And, if I could say, like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it that you don't die a little old maid and you could have a stud like me? I might get a solid 3 back.
So what's well, every approach works. All you need to do is convince one. Yeah, that's all
That's
you need to do is convince one.
there's
Uh,
a lot of no's in sales.
mm-hmm.
You get a lot of rejection. And with humor, we turned that into an opening line when we were single and in college. You would go to the bars and you'd see a young lady, and my opening line was, I thrive on rejection. Is there any chance I could buy you a beer? Or something. Try to make a win win out of it. And most of, you'd get a no, no. And then eventually some girl would just chuckle and go, sure, whatever. And that's the one I'm married to now. So,
Well, there you go. See, it works, folks. It
so
works.
always
You,
selling.
you might not think it, but I didn't even think about it from like an interviewing perspective, in the sense that, when I first graduated college and started sending out resumes to different newspapers across the country, I sent out, and I tell my kids this story all the time when they get frustrated when it comes to, finding a job or starting their career. I said, I sent out 160 individual resumes. I got one response back. And that's the job I started in and was there for 4.5 years, I believe. And that's where I got my feet wet and started in the industry. So all you need is one. It's the old adage that, when, especially around here where there's so many gators everywhere. And I tell people, see, I understand gators run faster than I do, but I don't have to outrun the gator. I just have to outrun you.
Right.
So there's the spin on it. And that's the spin we put on. I tell people this all the time from a health and wellness perspective is the sense that you don't have to do anything about it. You're an adult, you can do whatever you want, but you also have to accept the ramifications that follow, the consequences that follow. If you don't do this, you don't get that. And if you really want to, get healthier for a specific reason, and I always have them paint that picture of, because it looks different for everybody, then you need to do this to accomplish that. And you have to phrase it in such a way that resonates with them individually. And you did that. Like you said, you eventually say, hey, I thrive in rejection. Can I buy you a drink? You leaned into what scares us the most, being told no, being rejected.
I mean, and my friends and I were all kind of in on it. So a girl would say no, and I'd walk back to my friends. We'd all high five each other. Good for you. At least you tried. I'm glad
you tried. There you go. There you go. Well, I know, and obviously, I know you've listened to the podcast, and I appreciate that. I'm glad somebody is, But and there's more. I think. I hope.
It's like the podcast. I have dozens of fans all around the world.
And I aspire to have dozens of fans, so I have something to aspire to. So that's good. But I know that the connection with my business model and this podcast in conjunction is the connection between our health and well-being, our fitness, and our business, and what we do for a living, and the impact that it has on us both professionally and, of course, personally. So I know you've got a pretty interesting health and well-being story of your own on how you've turned your health and fitness into a positive that permeates your entire life.
Yeah, I mean, I was heavy, and I'm 5'7" on a good day, and I was getting a little roly poly there, and not feeling good, and it had been going on for years. I was a skinny little kid in high school, and so I mean, I wrestled in high school. I think I was like 119, something like that, and so back around 2016, I was getting sick and just not feeling good. My stomach would hurt, and I was having all this indigestion, and I was drinking a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean quite a bit. And I ended up one Sunday afternoon in the emergency room, just doubled up in pain. And the doctor said, well, you've got pancreatitis. And I said, I didn't know what that meant. And I said, okay. And he goes, well, you're going to have to quit drinking. And I said, till when? Because I thought the answer was going to be Wednesday, but it was not. So I quit drinking, and everything was going swimmingly along. And I was still not losing weight, and I was still heavy, and I had just substituted the alcohol with sweets and donuts and all those other good, delicious things. And so about 5 years ago, I got sick again, and they put me in the hospital, and I was in there, and the guy said, yeah, we got to take out your gallbladder. You're having basically the drinking had triggered the liver to have some problems, which made something else have some problems. And it was like one thing after another, and it was getting to my liver, and your gallbladder's messed up. Long story short, he told me when he took it out that I had a very angry gallbladder, is how he described it. I didn't know they had that, but so about a year after that, I was still bloated, and I was up to about 235, give or take. And doctor was like, you're diabetic. You've got your blood pressure's off the charts. You've got stress. I was stressed out. I mean, it was, and this was kind of during the middle of COVID on top of everything else. Nobody was wanting me to come to their house and sell them insurance at that point. it, things were just not working out well for me. And so I just said, I got to get it together. And I actually just did some online weight loss apps and stuff and started walking a lot. And since then, I've dropped about 40 pounds. My blood pressure's down. My diabetes is A1C is good. And, and I feel better physically, which translates to feeling better mentally. I can wear clothes that I hadn't worn in years and not feel like I'm, just stuffing, like, when you open up a can of muffins, or biscuits, So, so, it just translates from if you're physically feeling good, then you feel better mentally. And of course, the only thing is, if, for those of you who are listening to this with a camera, you can see my little turkey neck thing here going. But
No, we all have that.
well,
You get older, it is what it is.
yeah, I'm old, and the thing when you say you're getting older, the time seems to go faster. I don't know if this happens to everybody, but it seems like that runway is getting shorter and shorter. It's like, wow, where did the last year go? It just went by much faster than when I was 25 years old. So, I'm feeling better. I've maintained this weight loss pretty well. It's hard for me because I travel a lot, and I have do a lot of insurance meetings and things like that. And when you're on the road, you have to take advantage of those hotel treadmills, and which are brutal. I was in a hotel a couple of months ago, and the treadmill was just like the what do you call the thing you walk on? It was coming off the tracks, basically.
The elliptical, yes.
Yeah, it was just ghetto. I mean, but and then you have to eat out because you're on the road, and you have to count calories and all that. And I just use one of those little free apps online and just download, put my food in there, keep my diet. I can see what calories I have to stay under, and I don't hold my feet to the fire if I have a bad day. I don't beat myself up over it or anything. I'm just like, okay, that sucked, but tomorrow's coming and we'll start again. And that's all you can do. I mean, otherwise you just drive yourself nuts and insane.
Well, that's a product of the all in or all out society that we live in. If it's not perfect, we make every excuse in the book to not do it anymore. Well, I messed up today, so forget it. I'm not gonna bother with it anymore. And people don't seem to understand that this whole health and well-being thing, much like anything else, our lives are not linear in any way, shape, or form. There's no going straight up and there's no going straight down. There's a lot of, I like to call the roller coaster ride along the way. The goal ultimately is to be on the baby coaster as opposed to the big people coaster that goes upside down and roundabout and makes me feel sick. So we want to minimize that. But ultimately, every day our best is going to look different. However that looks, it might be here today, it might be here tomorrow, it might be down here the next day, but it's still the best we can do that particular day. And if we at least strive to do that, we're going to be better for it, as we move forward. And as you can see, folks, I mean, neither one of us, Chris or I, consider ourselves any more special than anybody else. Maybe I do a little, but just a little. I mean, we're not doing what Chris described and what I've described, many, many times on social media over the past several years. We're not doing anything extraordinary here. We're taking simple, manageable, realistic steps each and every day to improve ourselves even just a little bit. And there's so many of you out there doing the same, and it's an opportunity for, anyone who's out there listening to understand, if you start taking care of yourself, everything else you care about, the people, the things, the career you have, the business you run, whatever it is, are all going to benefit more for it.
But don't wait. In that same vein, don't wait to do something else until you lose weight. There's people that'll go, I'm not going to buy any insurance until I can drop 40 pounds so I get my rate down. Well, the odds of you dropping that 40 pounds in the next 6 months while I sit around waiting on you to do that it's not good. And I mean, I encourage people to it. I think it's great, especially if they quit smoking and that kind of thing. Life insurance companies, disability insurance, they've kind of baked some of that into the pudding already. They know that bacon is the national food of South Carolina, for instance. They know that we're born with cholesterol, and that if we cut us, Wesson oil just comes out. So it's just that, don't not buy insurance because you don't think that you can get it. You can always get a reconsideration. We do that with smoking all the time. People they smoke. Come back if you quit now. Come back in a couple of years, and we'll send a form up. It's called a reconsideration form, and they'll bump your rate down to non-smoking at that point. Go ahead and get what you got to get. Don't put it off because you hope and you don't have any kind of plan of action in between. Well, I'm going to just try to drop this 89 pounds. I'm like, that's not, go ahead and get it the life insurance now, or the disability, which is even, I always say the holy trinity of insurance is life insurance, health insurance, and disability. And just, make sure that you've got something in place. You can always come back later and revisit it and get the price down or whatever. Make sure you have it in place. But in the meantime, have a plan of action. Call Victor and say, Victor, give me a meal plan, or, help me figure out how to not eat a bag of potato chips at 9:00 at night. Which is, I grew up in a house. My mother would every night at 8:00 come walking into the den with something, a can of, we used to have those big tins of Charles chip potato chips, or a bag of some kind of nachos or something, and Greek. We're Greek, so of course we had pastries all through the house. And my mother loved baking, and she thought, if you are having a bad day, eat something, you'll feel better. And so that's the kind I don't know how you were raised, but that's the way my mother soothed our pain with food.
Well, I can honestly say, my bad health habits, especially my eating habits in my early adult years, were not fashioned, were not built when I was a child. My parents were never heavy. My dad, he was 160 pounds as long as I can remember. My mom was 130 pounds, still is to this day. My sister was never really big and heavy either, and really I wasn't either growing up, and I was an athlete as well. Then my early adult years, it all went away because I was working and not taking care of myself and all that. So I can't blame it on anybody, but myself. And I waited far too long to hire a coach to do it. And I used to use the same excuse I get a lot from people. Oh, I'm gonna try it on my own to lose those 30 pounds before I hire a coach. And my response is, that's not how it works. That's why you hire a coach. Because if you lose those 30 pounds without a coach, you don't need me then. I think you're okay at that point. It's before you get to that point. And unfortunately, too often, I would have people coming back to me now needing to lose 40 or 50 pounds as opposed to that initial 30. So now we're 3 months behind and 20 pounds, further away from our goal because you wanted to do it on your own. And I've shared this many times. Every good coach has a coach, because we can, in every aspect of our lives, because we can certainly always learn more. I know for you, before we wrap things up here, I know you have your podcast. I was on that podcast not all that long ago. Had a great time. I appreciate you having me on. Talk to people about what your podcast is all about, and also on to wrap things up, give people that one big tip, sales tip, that you can share with people out there they could implement today.
Well, the podcast is called You're Going to Be Great at This, which was the name of my first book I wrote on sales. And the second book is called Nearly Motivated, much like me.
Much like a lot of us.
Exactly. It's hard to stay motivated. And but the podcast is all about just the target audience there is anybody that's in sales, marketing, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, self-employed people, small business owners, all of us who don't have a giant corporation in back of us that we work for. And so we try to give just quick tips, quick advice, things that you can put into action immediately after listening to it. So, you had talked about some things that people could do right then and there in their business that helps, health wise, that translates to business. That's the kind of thing we try to do. We've got other guests slated. We've got a lady from the local chamber of commerce that talks about why you should be in a chamber of commerce, not necessarily hers. And we're hopefully, I was talking to an attorney yesterday. We're going to have maybe a couple episodes on some just legal things. So that's what the show is about. And I do sprinkle in the dumb stories, which are, there's plenty of them in there. And just to try to keep it light, the episodes are all fairly short. I have ADD, I'm pretty sure. So, so I'm like, I'm not going to listen to me. So, but yeah, and then the one good sales advice, I'll give you two. How's that? I'll give you a bonus one too. So
Absolutely.
we were talking earlier about job interviews and all that. The first thing you have to realize is, what are you selling? Are you selling fitness products or insurance or whatever? And the real thing that you're really selling is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you can sell yourself and, like I said, get the person's guard down, get them to trust you a little bit. There's an expression out there about people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And I always say I don't like that, because they don't have to know me. They can like me and trust me if they, hopefully somebody's been listening to this for the last 20 minutes or so. They probably go, okay, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. They don't know that I, have 12 bodies chopped up in the back of my car or whatever. So they don't really know me that well. Yeah,
He doesn't, folks. I promise. I hope.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But anyway, so you're really selling yourself. And once you do that, then you can position the product or whatever it is, trying to convince your child to eat, and or convince someone to hire you, because they're basically buying you. They're paying you for your services when you get a job. So that's what it is. It's just really, selling yourself first and foremost. And that's like hitting a double. That you don't even have to go to first base then. You can just go straight to second. And then my extra little piece of advice there is to remember that people will buy on the approval of others. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's always good to have an endorsement, an influencer who can speak on your behalf. Testimonials are great. And when we know that, though, we can switch it around and say you can sell on the approval of others. So if I can go and tell somebody, hey, Victor is one of my clients and people like Victor, then they're going to go, well, Victor's got a pretty good judgment on things. I trust him. And so it's a great way when you realize, it's a little psychological, but when you realize people buy in the back of their heads, you could see them thinking like, well, what I think about, what do you do when you buy a car? What's the first thing you do? You take it over to your friend's house and you show it to them. Mm-hmm. And you want them to go, man, that was great. You got a great deal. This is an awesome car. The last thing you want to hear is, man, you just got ripped off. That's a horrible car or whatever. So we want our judgments, our decisions to be approved by others. Mm-hmm. And when we sell, we can just say, there's a lot of people in your position that also have this product or also are using this service. And if you can name one or two without, violating HIPAA laws, whatever it takes, that gets you in the door so much quicker sometimes. And that's why people like to work by referrals, or, I don't like asking for referrals. I like asking for introductions. Mm-hmm. I'll say, hey, Victor, Bob Smith, can you pick up the phone and introduce me to him, or introduce him to me, and just say, and we ask for referrals like that. Or my language has always been, can you just lie and say something nice about me? So,
Well, hopefully we don't have to do that. We can say it's the truth.
Well, there it goes back to the humor thing. It's
Yes.
one big package. So
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. Well, I certainly appreciate you coming on. It's been a fun, enjoyable, and certainly informative and insightful episode. We'll definitely have to do this again. Since I did a second episode, we'll probably have to do that one and even things out there. And I'm sure there's plenty more we can talk about. So I appreciate you coming on.
well, thanks for having me. And if I can help anybody out, please look me up on the web. I'm at chriscastanes.com. The business is at serpfinancialbrokers.com. And listen to Victor. Do what he says. Eat what he tells you to eat.
And
That's all.
honestly, this is the first episode where the guest already knew what my next question was, which is, and I always ask this, and you just beat me to the punch, is where can people find you on social media and the web and all that stuff? So if they want to learn more and get to know you better and what the services and products you offer, share it with the audience. All that information, folks, as you know, will end up in the show notes as well. So you'll be able to access that information there. But you're the first one to actually jump me to beat me to the punch and answer the question before it was asked. So kudos to you, sir.
Well, thank you. I try to plan ahead.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on, folks. Once again, remember to like the show, leave a great review, subscribe, of course, and share this far and wide. Because not only do I want to get the message, of this podcast, get the more exposure for this podcast out there, but I also want people to understand, because it's very important to know that fitness is our business. Thanks so much for listening. I hope what we've shared on this show truly resonates with you. If you want to learn more about the health and fitness services I provide, head to my website, fernandezfit.com. If you're ready to connect with me about health and fitness coaching, send an email to info@fernandezfit.com or a text to 814-504-7774. And of course, you can find me all across social media, Victor Fernandez 123 on Facebook, Fernandez Fit on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as the Healthy Lives, Healthy Business channel on YouTube. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, always remember, fitness is our business.